Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2020 and a new experiment today where we're taking a look at what would happen if you had the perfect manager in non-league football. So as you can see on the screen, we do have our perfect manager. He's called Mr. Jenkaldo and he does manage Leamington. So Leamington at the moment, they're a team that has climbed up the leagues a bit over the last few years and they've been down in the Vanarama National League North for a few years. They did get relegated down into the Keilor Gas League Premier Division before coming back up after a second place finish, and they've been in the National League North now for 2 years. So if we have a look at their general information, they're currently predicted to finish 18th in the league. The league at the moment has 22 teams, so they are right down the bottom of those expectations. And I don't really know what to expect from this experiment, because this will be an interesting one to see how the perfect manager actually does at a non-league club, how big an impact he will have on the team. And you can see all of his attributes bumped up to 20 except for the level of discipline, which I put at 15 because I don't think putting that to 20 is ideal. But if we look at his staff details, he's got 20 across the board except for controversy, 200 current ability, 200 potential ability, and we've also given him a contract until 2100, which should stop him getting sacked very easily, because it's going to cost the club about 100 grand to get rid of him. So they won't realistically be doing that. He does have the Continental Pro license, but I have kept his reputation down, which should stop anybody else trying to poach him. And I did also arrange for him to move to another club at the end of 2100, I think, from memory. So he also shouldn't be poached by anybody. That is the plan at least. So I won't have to keep bringing him back to the club. We should just be able to see how he gets on. Now, if we have a quick look at the other aspects of the club, you can see they don't have an awful lot of coaching staff around them. Some of them are unpaid. There's not a lot of great qualifications in there either. The Continental B license, the highest next coaching badge, and the team as well. If we look at the value of the players in the team, about 16 grand in there. You can see the potential ability here, 105.90. It'd be interesting to see how many players above 100 he manages to bring in, because he does have 20 for resources, signing players, finding potential ability, current ability. They are all at the max as well, so it'll be interesting to see how he does out of that. But what we'll do now is we'll probably take the first few years quite slowly, so we'll just jump 1 year ahead and see how he gets on in his first season as a manager in non-league football. If you're looking forward to this experiment, do hit that like button down below and make sure to subscribe. The next experiment that I do will be the perfect team put into non-league and held there for their entire career, and they're also going to all be from Gibraltar, so a little bit of a different twist on that one. So do subscribe. That video or that experiment will be out as soon as this one finishes. I think this one might be a 1 or 2 parter, because I don't think it's going to need to be that in depth, but do drop a like if you're looking forward to it. And let's jump ahead 1 year into the future and see how he's getting on. So we are that 1 year into the future now, and you can see his time at the club. I mean, the friendlies went really well. Nice 4 wins before losing to Southport and then getting his first win against Curzon Ashton. But it wasn't the best start to the season until he did start to turn it around a little bit, although this was in the FA Cup before going out in the 4th qualifying round. And then a few wins started to trickle in, a nice unbeaten run of 5 games here through January, and then a few wins start to pop up as he starts to do a little bit better with the team. If we look at his league table finish, you can see that he has managed to finish Leamington in 19th, so they've actually finished worse than their media prediction. Although 1 more win, you could argue he would have finished a little bit higher up there if he'd done maybe just a couple more victories in there. But it wasn't the best season for him, if we're being entirely honest. They did have the 2nd highest goal scorer though, which is quite interesting. And if we just go and have a look at the overview of Leamington, you can see he is still in charge. Not a lot else has really changed with the club, but if we look at the players that they brought in, before there was only 1 player above 100. He now has 3 players above 100 in terms of value. Nobody above the 16 grand that we saw here before. So he's not been able to make an enormous amount. This is only potential ability, not current ability. And maybe actually, if we change this so that we can see what we have for current ability, which is here, then we will be able to see that we do have players, I mean, again, like 80, 70, 69, 68. He's brought in some players with good potential ability, nice young players to really add to the team, but the current ability very low throughout this squad, and he doesn't seem to have really improved it particularly much from where we were before, except for that potential ability. So not a lot else to really look at. What I'll do is I'll jump about 3 or 4 years ahead now, and then we can see how much of an impact he's had on the team if he's still there. Well, you can immediately see there's been a much better start at the beginning of his second full season at the club. This excellent run here. I mean, that must be, what, like 10 games that he's gone unbeaten with only 2 draws in there. An absolutely sensational start to the season. It did begin to tail off through November, December before coming back, and then a horrible March just kind of messed up his season a little bit. And it meant the following season he was still down in the Vanarama National League North. Bit more patchy this time off the start. A good little run through October. Maybe a little bit more consistent throughout the year, less streaky. But then the following season, still in the Vanarama National League North, and he's not had the best time of it. Did get through to the third round of the FA Trophy, but again, it's just not been the best season. Now, if we have a look at this league table and go back, in his first season, he finished down in 19th position. The following year, though, in an expanded league of 24, he managed to take them all the way up to 9th place, a much better season for him, but he didn't quite manage to edge into those top positions. 10th the year after, 70 points, and the year after that actually fell back a bit, only 62 points, finishing in 14th position. But he is still the manager of the team, and the interesting thing is when we look at this senior squad now, you can see that current ability, which was mostly in the 60s, is now in the 70s. Even some players up in the 80s. They're in on loan from Crew, Rui Ferreira, but very good players when we sort them by potential ability. He's got a few players now ticking over 100, and quite a few of them not actually in on loan, are just good young players. So he's starting to see a little bit of a change begin to take place. He's still got his perfect stats. If we have a look at his milestones, no landmarks yet. A few awards. He was actually shortlisted for Manager of the Season, but he hasn't won it yet. Only one Manager of the Months at this point, and he's not had the best time in the cup competitions yet. No great runs through his time. And he's not got the best biography yet either. But he is now 4 years into his tenure at the club, and he hasn't got them promoted. He has moved them up to mid-table, but he's just not been able to push them into that next level. His reputation has improved slightly, but it's just not quite enough just at the moment. So let's go forward another 3 or 4 years and see if he has finally managed to get them out of the Vanarama National League. Well, as you can see, the following season with the club was so much better right the way through the start of the campaign, also making it into the FA Cup first round against Hereford as well, a 2-0 defeat there. Out of the FA Trophy in the first round, but a much better league campaign. And as you can see, the following year they were in the National League. He did finally manage to get them promoted in the 5th season. And the National League actually went pretty well. Quite a few draws, a few wins in here, through in the FA Trophy third round before being beaten by Exeter. But a very good National League season, and the following year as well, still in the National League, a bit more patchy, another FA Cup first round appearance. But not the best finish to the season. And just having a look at this league table for him, going back to his first season at the club, which this was the year he was promoted, he finished 12th in his first season in the National League, 20 odd points clear of relegation, about the same distance from the top of the table. And then the following year, bit tougher going, finished down in 18th place, so 7 points away from relegation. Very tight, very packed down there. Still about 20 points off the playoffs, so he hasn't progressed too much. That season that he got promoted out of the Vanarama National League North, you can see they did finish as champions, 1 point clear of Telford United, which is very good for them to have finished at the top of that table after finishing down in 14th the previous season. And that's the sign of those players we saw in their 70s and 80s. So he's still at the club now, a little bit patchy, 19th in his first season, They're 9th, 10th, 14th before finishing as champions, and then a 12th and now 18th place finish. He's a bit up and down all over the place, but they've got a much bigger stadium now. That's gone from 2,000 on to 4,300. And when we look at this senior squad and sort them by current ability, you can see we're now up to the 90s here. Ethan Burnett, a very good player for this team that he's brought in on a free from League One, and he was actually playing in League One as well. So that is the benefit of having such a good manager. He can attract much better players to come down. And you can see they've got a lot in the 80s, high 70s as well. Very few players in the 50s and 60s, which is where the club was when he first came in. So he's doing a really good job with the team. Not much of an increase in the value of the players, though. That has not yet happened. But if we have a look at Mr. Jenkaldo, you can see when we go to his milestones, he does now have a landmark, finishing as champions of the National League North. A few awards as well. Manager of the season the year after we left off. Very good job there. And then Manager of the Year, runner-up in the National League. So he nearly won consecutive Manager of the Year in 2 different leagues, which would have been very impressive. So you can see he is a very talented manager. It's just not quite finishing for him at this point. Not an awful lot of stuff to see there. And in his biography, he does now have some of his own personal achievements alongside his club achievements as well. Now, I think that this is actually running quite slowly through time. Now, I don't want to spend too long on this, so I'm actually just going to jump about 10 years forward now, because it seems to be being very slow progress up the leagues, and we'll see if he's still at Leamington and what he's managed to achieve with this team. So we've gone another 10 years into the future, and looking at where he was when we left off before, we're just looking for big results here. You can see his league campaign again, not brilliant, and then the following year it was horrific. Look at that, he doesn't win his first game until October, and then there's only 2 wins that month before going on another long run without a win. This is dreadful form. Right the way through to the end of the season, he somehow keeps his job despite getting relegated down to the National League North. And while down in the National League North, they do make it to the FA Cup first round. It's a good campaign overall, and they remain in the National League North, but you can see it's much better this time around. A lot more victories in there. Getting through to the FA Trophy first round before being beaten in the next round. And they do make it into the playoffs, a 1-0 win over Barrow, but then in the semi-finals, a 2-1 defeat to Chorley. So they're in their 3rd consecutive year in the National League. Again, a very, very good season. And you can see they do make it back into the National League. He's still in charge of the club. Really poor run of form here, that they pick it up towards the end of the year and do manage to survive in the National League. FA Trophy, very good run through the 4th round. Also make it through in the semi-final of the FA Trophy, but then lose in the final 3-2 to Yeovil. A lot of action in the first 22 minutes. All 5 goals in the first 22 minutes. And the following year in the National League, not doing absolutely brilliantly. No cup run this year either. Another miserable year. But they do make it to the FA Cup second round, I think, for the first time before being beaten. Out in the FA Trophy straight away, another mid-table finish. The following year, again, a very good season. They actually have another good FA Trophy run, get to the semi-final, draw with Dartford in the first leg, but beat them 2-0 in the second. And this time, they do win the FA Trophy on penalties. A very good victory for them there as he wins another piece of silverware. But they actually lose in the National League playoff semi-final. So close to making it into the Football League with this team. And the following year, decent start, falls away a little bit. They're doing okay through the season, but then right about here, it comes off the rails. And you may notice we're in the 2037 season, it is 2037. After all these years of service, this is the run that gets him sacked, which to me is unbelievable that has happened. If we have a look at these league finishes, and you can see the season he's been sacked, Leamington only in 14th place. It's not a bad finish, but the year before they finished in 5th, and they were only 3 points off second place, 6 points off finishing as champions. It is very difficult to get out of this league, so he's very unlucky not to have made it into the Football League after that year. But you can see the years before that, bounced around mid-table. It's a real shock that he got sacked when he did. The year before that, obviously in the National League North after they got relegated. And that's when I would expect them to have sacked him, not the season after that. But we look here, they finished as champions in the 30-31 season. Going back before that, 5th place finished, 9th place. And the year before that, they were back up in the National League. So, yeah, just a bit disappointing, really, that he wasn't able to do a much better job of everything. Yeah, there's the season that they got relegated in 23rd place. 18th the year before that, 12th. And then we're back to where we left off before. So, all a bit strange, I think, is the way that I would explain this time that he was at Leamington. I'm surprised that he didn't manage to achieve more. If we look at their managers, you can see he did get 17 years at the club, 2 league titles, both the Vanarama National League and 1 FA trophy as well. If you look at the history of competitions for the club, he has delivered them their only major successes, winning the FA trophy, the biggest trophy of them all for them, and 2 National League Norths as well. So he will be an absolute legend of this club. If we actually look at their general information, you can see he's the only legend at the club after 17 years of pretty slow and deliberate success. But a real shame. You can see he's got 2 stars, still got that Continental Pro license. He's only 42 years old, still nice and young. Total value of players bought 22k. Highest fee received 14k. Oh, sorry, that's 22k of players sold. He actually never spent a penny as manager, despite bringing 122 players in, but 32k on agents' fees. Win ratio only 40%. It's not the 60% that you see of the greatest managers, but when you're fighting in non-league, I think you don't mind a 40% win ratio. Won more games than he lost. That's the main thing there. 374 wins, 320 defeats, which is not too bad, and also not that high a number of draws. So I think overall you could be happy. Positive goal for rather than against. But it's just not been the best of times for him. If we look at his milestones now and see the landmarks, you can see relegated here in on his record, but then those 3 competition wins with the club. His awards: Manager of the Year, runner-up in 2032, Manager of the Season in 2031, Manager of the Season in 2024. He has won a few personal honours in there. And if we look at this overall record, 18-year spell with Leamington, won the Vanarama National League North twice, FA Trophy, Vanarama National League North Manager of the Season twice, and runner-up in the National League twice as well. So, unusual. Now, the more unusual thing is that I have gone even further into the future with him. He doesn't ever get hired ever again. I've also gone into the future and put his reputation up to max, and he still doesn't get hired. He has no plans whatsoever. He's not on to sign for another club because his contract's been terminated. I don't understand what is going on, but he never gets hired again, which is a really disappointing way to end this experiment. I would have loved for him to go for a big club and us to be able to continue to see it, but sometimes these experiments just don't work out for whatever reason. And it's a problem I've had many times before, where these managers that you create just never get hired. You have to force them into another club. But as we saw with Leamington, he managed to get promoted into the National League, couldn't break through that barrier of the next step up. Despite being the best manager they could possibly have, he still got sacked, even if it did take 17 years, although I think that has more to do with the 100-year contract he had than anything else. So it goes to show that the type of manager you have in game really doesn't matter that much. And that's why you see in your own saves the likes of Guardiola, Mourinho, Klopp, all getting sacked after a few years at the big clubs, because the game is just kind of biased against those managers. And maybe it's done so that you as a player manager can get into those big jobs and they aren't taken up by one person for about 20-30 years. That's my theory, at least. But I've done this experiment in the past with a full team of the best backroom staff, and you end up with the same result with those teams not making it into the next step. So I think that these are extremely underpowered roles. And that's my theory. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. Sorry there won't be another part to this, but as I said earlier, the next experiment is the perfect team. in Football Manager for a non-league team and for Gibraltar. They are playing for both. So do subscribe for that video when it comes out either tomorrow or the day after. Make sure to drop a like down below if you enjoyed this one. But until next time, see ya.